Yes, Judge. I provided the court the full transcript, and we have the redacted transcripts ready to be passed out. I provided to the court at that time. We are still waiting on the video to be redacted. It's in the process.
Mr. Fleischman, have you had a chance to go over the transcript?
No, I just got it. I'm going to read through it. We'll probably have to take a break for the video, just so we can make sure it follows the transcript.
Ms. O'Brien, you got all of these changes done? Okay. Have you listened to it, though, since you did it?
No, they are still finalizing the CD, and then they're going to bring it over, and I'll just pop my earbud in and listen to make sure.
But will you read them, both the redaction instruction and the transcript instruction?
If I can get those instructions ahead of time, I certainly will.
Ready? Jury entering.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. We're ready to continue on with the next state witness.
The state calls crime? Yes, please. Thanks, Judge. The state calls Investigator David Ackerman.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourselves to the members of the jury and spell your last name for the record?
My name is David Ackerman, Ackerman. I am the crime scene supervisor for the Delray Beach Police Department.
Describe for the members of the jury what a crime scene supervisor does.
Basically, I supervise I have 5 full-time investigators, and I have a latent print investigator. Basically, I go over their reports, their photographs, and just make sure the unit is running smoothly, everyone is trained possible, and help them with hands-on training too.
How long have you worked for the Delray Beach Police Department?
Over 12 years.
And how long have you been a crime scene supervisor?
For about 3.5.
Before you were a supervisor, what position did you hold?
I was just an investigator.
Okay. So what's the difference between a crime scene investigator and a crime scene supervisor?
Like I said before, the unit's composed of 5 investigators, so you need one person basically to run the unit, to make sure the reports are being submitted correctly, written correctly, that everyone is trained properly and can handle scenes, to review the reports, and then if there's any issues to go over it with them, and basically maintain the equipment, just to make sure the unit is running well.
What type of training and experience do you have to be a crime scene supervisor?
Well, I have I guess 9 years of experience before, and I'm certified through the International Association for Identification as a crime scene analyst.
And what did you have to do to get that certification?
Basically, I studied for it. It's just a test. It's a written test. And I also have my master's degree in DNA and serology through University of Florida, Gainesville.
So I want to talk to you about a crime scene supervisor. Is there any point where you might assist a crime scene investigator with a case?
Yes, usually for major scenes, like for homicides that I'm usually called out at night if I'm not on duty, or if I'm at the PD working, I'll respond to those kind of scenes.
Okay, and as part of your duties and responsibilities as a crime scene supervisor, do you assist the assigned investigator with certain tasks on scene?
Yes.
Let's talk about December 8th, 2016. Were you working that night?
No.
Were you called out to a scene that night?
Yes.
Okay. Around what time were you called out?
I don't remember the exact time. I know what time I responded or arrived at the hospital.
Okay.
It's about 11:40 that night. I responded to Delray Medical Center.
Okay. And is that where you were initially assigned to respond to?
Yes.
So what, if anything, did you do at Delray Medical Center without telling us what other people said?
Okay. I was told there was a shooting, so I responded there. The victim was there. So once I'm there, I basically photographed the victim on scene. and collect any evidence that I see on there, and usually I collect the clothing if the victim is there.
Okay. And in this particular case, did you collect clothing?
Yes.
What items of clothing did you collect?
Officer Cinciarulli turned over to me a pair of black gym shorts. There was a charger in the pocket, a black underwear, and the victim's driver's license.
And while you were on scene at Delray Medical Center, you mentioned that you saw the victim.
Correct.
What did the victim look like when you saw him?
I could tell that the hospital staff or the paramedics had worked on him. There were signs of medical intervention. There was intravenous catheters and catheter, I think, in his legs. There was blood on him, and the nurses did point out to me 2 holes that looked like to be bullet holes.
Do you recall where you saw those bullet holes?
Yes, one was on his front chest. Just check my report. His upper left torso, and another hole in his upper left back, on his back.
And when you originally saw the victim at the Delray Medical Center, had he expired at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So he was no longer alive?
Correct.
What did you do with, if anything, with the victim's body?
Basically, when we have a body, we just take overall photographs of the body. We take a photograph of their face to show for identity purposes. If they have any tattoos, we'll photograph those. And any injury photographs, we'll take there on scene too.
Do you do anything as far as placing anything on any of the appendagers of the body?
Yeah, usually our homicide protocol is to bag the hands. There could be any trace evidence under the fingernails. Usually the medical examiner's office will process the body, so we try to just conserve any evidence in there. We'll place preservation bags over their hands and tape it closed to conserve any trace evidence under their fingernails or on their hands.
And in this particular case, in December 2016, did you actually place those preservations on Jimmy Peoples, the victim's hands?
Yes, I did.
At some point, did you respond out to the gas station or the crime scene?
Yes.
And was that after midnight?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Do you remember around what time it was?
About 12:22 that night.
So now we're kind of talking about December 9th, 2016, but
Correct.
it's still the same 24-hour period.
Yes.
When you went to the gas station, the Chevron gas station, who was on scene, if you recall?
CSI Hellenbrecht.
And is CSI Hellenbrecht the crime scene investigator that was assigned this case?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you do while on scene at the gas station?
When I arrived on scene, she basically walked me through the scene, explained to me what transpired, what she had done, and we went over any other additional evidence that needed to be collected or any kind of processing that needed to be done. And basically, at that point, I think she had gotten most of it under control. We just were kind of going through things, looking at things, just going over the scene itself.
And while you were on scene with CSI Hellenbrecht, are you her supervisor?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ensure that she was doing everything that she was trained to do?
Yes.
Did you see anything that she missed?
No, I did not.
How long would you say you were on scene at the Chevron gas station? If you recall.
Probably about an hour and a half.
Where did you go next?
To the police department.
Okay. And how far is the Chevron gas station from the police department?
It's probably like a 5-minute drive.
And when you got to the police department, did you make contact with any of the detectives or officers?
Later on, yes.
Okay. So what did you do originally when you got to the police department?
I think I met with CSI Hellenbrecht. The clothing that I collected at the hospital, I turned over to her. She was going to secure it in a drying chamber.
What's a drying chamber?
Usually if there's any kind of evidence that's wet, we put it in a drying chamber. We don't want it to get contaminated or contaminate anything else. So we'll place it. It's secured. It's got you can hang clothes from it. It basically just has air circulating in there, so it can dry the evidence.
And I failed to ask you this before, but when you collected the victim's clothing, the gym shorts, as well as the underwear, the charger, what did you do with those items?
Once I got to the police department, I turned them over to CSI Hellenbrecht.
What did you do with them when you originally got them? What's your I guess your process?
I took it from the officer, and at that point, I secured it in my vehicle, and I went to the scene with CSI Hellenbrecht, and I kept it secured in my vehicle at that time. And then once we got to the police department, I transferred it over to her.
Okay. When you collect those items, do you place them in any type of bag?
Yeah, usually if you have evidence, we try to keep all our, anything with evidence we put in brown bags.
Okay. And if you have clothing items that are possibly wet, do you also wrap them in plastic and then place them in a brown bag?
No, usually any kind of evidence we have, blood related, we try to keep everything in brown bags. That way it can breathe and doesn't get any kind of mold in there or anything like that. So we, more often than not, will use brown bags to collect our evidence.
Okay. So you mentioned that when you're now at the Delray Beach Police Department, you handed over the clothing to CSI Helen Brecht.
Correct.
What did you do next?
Detective Leon met with me and he requested that I collect a gray jacket and a plaid shirt that was in one of the interview rooms.
Okay. Describe for the members of the jury the interview room. What's the layout of the interview room and what leads into it?
It's in our detective bureau and it's just basically in our hallway we have a couple of interview rooms. It's not a very big room, it's kind of a small room. There's one door in and out and there's a table, I believe, and probably usually 2 chairs in there where a suspect or a witness or subject could be in there talking to one of the detectives.
Okay. And does the interview room have any type of windows in it?
No.
And do you know if the interview room is equipped with audio and video recording?
Usually, yeah, they are equipped with it, yes.
Okay. And is that an audio video recording that constantly loops or do you have to turn it on and off?
I believe usually they turn it on and off.
You mentioned that Detective Leon asked you to obtain some clothing from an individual that was in that room. Had you ever met that individual before?
No.
Did you know that individual to be any particular person?
No.
Okay. So did you meet with that individual?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do?
Well, once I collected that clothing for Detective Leon, I met with Detective Hart, and he requested that I actually take the rest of the suspects.
Hold on a minute.
Effect on the listener, Judge? What he was doing next?
Overrule for now.
Okay. So you said I'll just kind of go into this. You said before that you collected the clothing. So did you actually have the individual remove the items of clothing and give them to you?
Those 2 things that were in the room, they were there before I got there.
Okay. So clothing was already there. When you met with the individual and took those items of clothing, was he still in the room?
No.
Okay. So nobody was in the room?
No.
Okay. All right. So after you took those items of clothing, you met with Detective Leon again. Is that what you said?
Detective Hart.
Detective Hart. Okay. Are you familiar with Detective Hart?
Yes.
Have you worked with him before?
Yes.
Okay. And what, if anything, did he request you do?
He already had obtained a buckle standards, DNA standard from the suspect, and then I was going to take the suspect's clothing too, collect his clothing.
Okay. So can you tell the members of the jury what a buckle standard is?
Yeah. Basically, anytime we have DNA in a scene, whether it's blood or saliva or sweat, the lab usually requests that we get a standard from somebody. That way they can rule that person out. So if you're a victim of crime and I go to your house and I say there's blood in your house, I'll collect the DNA, the blood sample, but also get a sample from you. That way the lab can eliminate you as being that person, basically. Okay. So it's basically for elimination purposes to see how many people are there. They can eliminate you and say, all right, if it's all your DNA, then they say, all right, there's no point of processing it because it's not the suspect DNA.
Okay. So at some point, does Detective Hart give you a buckle standard?
Yes.
What did you do with that standard?
I took it from him and I put it in a brown bag.
Okay. Is that the same type of brown bag for evidence?
Correct.
Okay. And you said Detective Hart requested you take clothing from an individual.
Yes.
Is that clothing that was actually on the individual's person?
Yes.
Okay. And did you do that?
Yes.
Do you remember where?
I was in a temporary holding facility at the police department.
Okay. Can you describe for the members of the jury what a temporary holding facility looks like?
Yes. Anytime someone is arrested for anything, rather than come through the Tire PD, they come in through the back. We have a temporary holding facility. It's kind of like a jail. We don't call it, it's not really a jail though. It's like a holding facility where we have cells in there that we can keep them detained in there. And then sometimes if they have to get processed, we take their fingerprints, we take their photograph there. That's the area where we do that, and they write their paperwork up. And usually after that, then the suspect is taken up to the Palm Beach County Jail.
Okay. So in this particular case, did you take clothing items from a person later determined to be Mr. Dumercy?
Yes.
Okay. And did you actually take photographs of him as well?
Yes.
Did you take the photographs of him prior to taking his clothing items?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, may I approach the witness?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I've already showed defense what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 26A through J. You take a look at those and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, these are the pictures I took in the temporary holding facility.
And are these pictures fair and accurate copies of the photos that you actually did take in that temporary holding facility?
Yes.
And would that be probably on December 9th, 2016?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, at this point, state enters states 26A through J.
There's no objection.
Okay, state exhibits 26A through J will be introduced without objection.
May I publish it?
Yes, you may.
So just placing in front of you first 26A. Just zoom out. CSI Ackerman, can you tell us what we're looking at in 26A?
That's the subject that clothing I had him remove and collected.
Okay, so this is again prior to you removing that clothing?
Correct.
Okay, and I notice he's not wearing shoes.
Correct.
Was he wearing shoes when you originally met with him?
I don't recall. Sometimes it's common practice in a temporary holding facility to take subjects' shoes off before they're placed in cells, so I'm not sure if I had it on originally or when they were taken off.
Okay, and is removing the shoes part of a safety protocol for the
Correct.
officers? So 26B. Again, is this that same subject later known to you as Mr. Dumercy?
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed you're taking a close-up of his face. What's the purpose of that?
Usually if we take an overall photograph of somebody, we get a shot of just their face. It's like an identity shot just to show who the person actually is.
Okay. And 26C, is this just kind of a midsection photograph?
Correct, yes.
26D, is that just his lower extremities?
Yes.
Okay. So let's look at 26E. What's the purpose of taking this photograph?
Usually we like to just take overall photographs of the hands to see if there's any kind of obvious injuries.
Okay. And when you met with Mr. Dumercy on December 9th, 2016, did you notice any type of injuries to his person?
Not that I recall, no.
26F. Is that just a photograph of his, I believe it would be his right hand?
Correct, yes.
And again, did you see any injuries on his right hand?
I did not know.
26G. Is that a photograph of his left hand?
Yes.
And any injuries on his left hand that you recall?
No.
Okay. 26H. This looks like a photograph of, his forearms as well as the palms of his hands.
Correct.
Did you see any injuries to his forearms, inner forearms, or the palms of his hands when you met with him?
No.
26I. Is this just a close-up of his, I think, right hand?
Correct.
And again, finally 26J. Close-up of his left hand?
Correct.
Okay. So after you took the photographs of Mr. Dumercy and took the clothing, did you give him something else to wear?
Yeah, it's common practice if we take someone's clothing, we want to give them something to wear. So it's called a Tyvek suit. It's just a white suit that people wear like on biohazard scenes. So basically their legs goes up to their head and has a little hoodie on it. So it's something to wear if we take their clothing.
And where you took these photographs and had him kind of derobe and redress, that's not an area where there were video cameras or constant recording,
No,
correct?
I don't think, no.
Okay. When you took all of these items of evidence, where do you take them and place them?
This, I think there was nothing that was wet or had to be dried in a drying chamber like I talked about before. So it was basically packaged and placed into an evidence locker in our crime scene laboratory. We have secure lockers where we put evidence in there with only the ones that have the key. So we lock it and then we keep the key until we have to go back later and retrieve the items.
Okay, so you mentioned we are the only ones who have the keys. Who is we?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's in the crime scene laboratory, so only the crime scene investigators are allowed in there. It's a secured area.
How many crime scene investigators do you have?
So there's 5 full-time investigators.
Okay. So only those 5 people have access to those lockers, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And once items are placed in those lockers, are they taken out for any other purpose?
No, I mean, sometimes we can do examinations if there's something on there to examine, and then we take additional photographs. But for this one, I didn't remove them for that kind of procedure.
And anytime you remove an item of evidence or place it into a certain area, is there kind of a receipt that goes with it to determine kind of a chain of custody, so to speak?
Yes, anytime we submit any kind of evidence into our evidence custodian. We do an evidence voucher that lists everything out on there, what the item is, the color, if it's money, how much it is, all that kind of stuff. The labels, or if it's a quantity, they put a quantity on there, but it tracks it. And then you print it out, and then you submit it with your evidence to the evidence custodian.
Okay. So the crime scene lockers are in a different location than where the evidence custodian is, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So who places from the crime scene locker any items of evidence and gives them to the evidence custodian?
Just the crime scene investigators.
And in this particular case, did you actually place anything with the evidence custodian, or was that CSI Hellenbrecht?
The items that were collected at the temporary holding facility, I ended up submitting it. The evidence that I collected from the hospital, I turned over to CSI Hellenbrecht, and
Okay.
she submitted that stuff into evidence.
Okay, so she would be the one who actually places that with the evidence
Correct.
custodian. Okay. At some point, did you go back to that Chevron gas station?
Yes.
When was that?
So it must have been December 9th still. That morning, I met with Officer Kramer at the Chevron.
And for what purpose?
His unit, he's part of the traffic unit, and part of their unit, they when they have traffic homicides, they map the scene. They have equipment that they can take maps and take measurements of the scene, so they can do a kind of a sketch of it. So I went out there to meet with him just to make sure he knew what we were looking for as far as marking the evidence, and then the actual property lines, so he can actually get everything on the scans.
Okay. So it looks like you were pretty much dealing with this case from around 11:30 on December 8th, 2016, at least into around 10 a.m. on December 9th, 2016. Is that pretty common?
Yes.
Okay. Is that one of your kind of normal shifts that
Yes.
you tend to work?
Yes.
At any point, did you do anything else in this particular case?
No, that's really it.
I have nothing further. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Commissioner, Councilman?
No questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Call the next witness, please.
State calls Mr. Deandre McCray.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Deandre McCray, MCCRAY.
And can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury? Tell them how old you are, whether or not you go to school, where you live.
How you guys doing? I go to school at Palm Beach State College. I'm 19 years old, and I'm thinking I should play sports again, but I'm thinking about it.
What do you go to school for?
I don't have a major yet.
Okay. And are you working right now?
Yes.
What do you do for a living?
I work at Home Depot. I'm a garden associate
Where do you live?
in Derry Beach, Florida.
And have you lived in Delray Beach all your life?
Yes.
Where did you go to high school?
Atlanta Community High School.
And how old were you back in December of 2016?
17, I believe.
Okay.
17.
17?
Yes.
Do you know Darnisha McCray?
Yes.
How do you know Darnisha?
That's my sister.
And is she your older sister or your younger sister?
My older sister.
Do you have any other brothers or sisters?
Yes.
How many other brothers or sisters do you have?
I have 2 brothers.
Do you know a person by the name of James Peoples?
Yes.
How did you know Mr. Peoples?
He was like a brother to me. He through my sister, they went out. Well, they talked basically, but then he just like got close to the family, and we just been close ever since.
At the point in time of the shooting in December, how long had you known Mr. Peoples?
I know, wow, way before that.
You got to speak into the microphone.
I knew him for a while, way before that happened.
Was it a period of a couple of years, more than a year?
More than years, like 5 years maybe.
Did you know Delinord Dumercy?
Yes, I do.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you identify him by an article of clothing and his location in the courtroom?
Purple tie.
And where is he in the courtroom?
sitting right there.
Your Honor, please let the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
Your record will so reflect.
How is it that you knew Mr. Dumercy?
Through my sister, they went out.
Okay, so you knew him as somebody that your sister dated.
Yes.
At the time of the shooting in December of 2016, how long had you known Mr. Dumercy?
I say about 2 years. I believe 2 years.
So I want to take you to the day of the shooting in December of 2016. On December 8th of 2016, what did you do that day before the incident at the Chevron?
The day before, I went to a recital, I believe, at Boynton Beach High School.
Did you go to the recital with anybody?
Yes.
Who did you go with?
My ex-girlfriend.
A girl that you were seeing at the time?
Yes.
And were you in the recital, or were you just going to watch?
I was going to watch with her.
How did you get to the Boynton Beach High School?
I don't remember that.
Did you have a car at the time?
No.
Did she have a car at the time?
Yes, my sister.
No, I'm sorry, your girlfriend.
Oh, no.
Your sister had a car, though?
Yes.
And do you remember what type of car that she had?
No.
Would she ever let Mr. Peoples drive her car?
Yes.
Do you remember what time you get to the Boynton Beach High School?
It was late, I believe, in the afternoon, but I don't remember, the specific time.
Did you get dropped off there?
I believe so.
Okay. And then how is it that you leave Boynton Beach High School?
My sister came and got us, her and James people.
Okay, tell the members of the jury how it was that you get picked up from Boynton Beach High School.
They came, it was late, I think it was 9 o'clock, going on 9, 10. And then they were just waiting for us in the parking lot. And then we left from there, and we was on our way to Derry.
To Delray?
Yes.
Where were you going after that you got picked up?
We were going home.
Was your girlfriend going to come to your house in Delray?
No.
Did you have to take her to her house?
Yes.
Okay. Is that where you guys go first before you get to Delray?
Oh, yes.
Do you remember who's driving the car?
Narnisha.
Your sister?
Yeah, my sister.
And where did your girlfriend at the time live?
In Boynton.
About how long does it take to get from the high school to drop her off in Boynton?
That took a little less than 15 minutes.
And where do you go after she gets dropped off?
Home, Derry. Back to Derry.
Okay. Is that when the incident happens?
Yes.
What was, on the way to Delray, what did James Peoples' demeanor appear to be?
He was, I didn't really see anything wrong with him.
You didn't notice anything?
No.
Did you ever hear anyone mention the defendant's name before you get to Delray Beach?
No.
So tell the members of the jury what happens when you get to Delray Beach.
When we get to Derry, we get off the light. As soon as the light turned, green, we seen someone on a bike. I didn't recognize him, but James did.
How do you know that James recognized him?
Because after the light turned green, he had said, "Can we pull over?"
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And did he say that to your sister?
Yes.
What was the tone of his voice when he said that?
He didn't say it in an angry tone. He just said, "Can you just pull the car over?" Calmly.
Okay. What does your sister do when he makes that request?
She pulls over.
Do you remember where it was that she pulled over?
It was a plaza, but I don't know what the plaza's called, but it was a plaza.
Do you know if it's the plaza across the street from the Chevron gas station?
Yes.
And what happens when your sister pulls over in that plaza?
He gets out the car.
He being James?
Yes.
Does he say anything as he gets out of the car?
No.
Did you see Mr. Peoples with a weapon on him?
No.
What does he do when he gets out of the car?
He just walks. He's just walking
Where does he walk?
across the street to Chevron, I guess.
Is he saying anything at the time that he's walking
No,
that you could hear?
no,
Do you get out of the car?
no.
What happens next?
We made a U-turn. No, we went back on Atlantic and Congress, and then we passed Atlantic, and we was looking for him. Then he came and got back in the car. Then we pulled into the gas station.
Okay, let me stop you there. So you said we made a U-turn. When you say we, do you mean you and your sister?
Yes.
James is not in the car.
No.
And then you said we made a U-turn and we picked him up.
Yes.
When you say him, do you mean James?
James. Yes.
Okay. So after you make a U-turn and you pick James up, where do you go next?
To the gas station.
And when James gets back in the car, does he have any weapons on him?
No.
And what was his demeanor like then?
He didn't. Still, I couldn't tell.
Where does the car go from there?
We pulled around on the side. No, he gets out. Then we pull around on the side, and then little you know, he pulls out a gun and just shoots James.
Let me stop you and back you up. You said a lot. When you're talking about people, I need you to use their name.
I'm
okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
So you go to the Chevron.
Mm-hmm.
What does Darnisha do with the car when you get to the Chevron?
She stops.
And what happens to the people inside the car?
James got out again.
And how did James appear when he got out of the car?
I didn't see anything wrong with him.
Okay. Did you think he was mad when he got out of the car?
I don't think so.
Did you think he seemed furious when he got out of the car?
No.
Did you ever give a statement to the police and tell them something different than what you're telling us today?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you tell the police the night of the incident that you thought James was furious when he got out of the car?
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
I was emotional.
Were you, when you say you were emotional, what emotions were you feeling?
I was sad, shocked. I was in my right state of mind.
How close in time to seeing Mr. People shot was that statement?
That was like hours after, I think, like 3 hours after, 2 maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay, so you see James get out of the car. Where in the gas station area is it that he gets out of the car?
I can't explain. Like it's like it was further away from like the where we were, like on the side. Like can't explain it. You know?
Were you all by the pumps to the gas station?
Yeah.
And then the convenience stores in the middle of the gas station?
Yeah.
So you and your sister were in the car by the pumps when James gets out?
Yes.
Are you able to see the defendant when James gets out of the car?
I didn't see him. No.
Did James say anything when he got out of the car?
No.
Did you see James with a weapon at any time when he got out of the car?
No.
Did you ever see him with a weapon in his hands as he's walking towards the convenience store?
No.
Now, you told us that you saw the defendant shoot James. Tell the members of the jury how it was that you saw that. What exactly was it that you saw?
Well, when he was walking up to the gas station door, all I seen was he run out and shoots him twice, and we drove off quickly because we were scared, and then we sped off and came back because he was just shot, and then we didn't call the police. Someone else called the police for us, but that's just about it.
Okay, you said he was walking up to you used he twice in the same sentence.
Sorry, James.
James was walking up to the store.
To the gas station door.
And then what do you see the defendant do?
Then he just walked up to the door, and then all I see was Delinord shooting.
Does Delinord come out of this? Do you see Delinord come out of the store?
Yes, we did.
And you said you saw him shoot James twice.
Yes.
Can you describe that? When did you see him shoot him? When did you see Delinord shoot Mr. Peoples?
As soon as he get to the door. As soon as he get to the door, he came out the gas station and he just opened fire.
Do you see what Mr. Peoples does when he gets shot the first time?
Kept going, he kept shooting. Delinord kept shooting.
Do you see what James does when James gets shot?
Falls on the floor.
Did you see what type of weapon Mr. Dumercy had?
Handgun.
Do you know if it was a semi-automatic or a revolver? Is that a no?
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. You said you didn't call 911.
No.
Why not?
Shot.
Did you have a phone on you at the time?
Yes, I did.
Did your phone make phone calls?
No.
Explain that to the members of the jury. How do you have a phone that doesn't make phone calls?
My phone wasn't in service. I had like a, I could say, non-service phone. Couldn't make no phone calls. You just download stuff and play games on it. You had to connect to the Wi-Fi to like use it. So that's it.
Did you not call 911 because...
Objection later.
Why didn't you call 911?
I couldn't.
You were not able to?
And we were shocked. That just happened. We just seen it.
Do you know how long it takes for you and Darniche to come back to the scene where James had been shot?
Yeah, like 2 minutes, like 2 quick minutes. We came back around.
And what do you do when you return to the scene?
I couldn't believe it. Like, he just really got shot. Like, I was
Did you try to give any medical attention to James, or did you sort of stay to the side?
I was just looking at him like he could be dead or alive. Like, I was just looking at him like, is he alive? I hope he's alive. But that's it.
Did you stay on the scene until the police got there?
Yes, I did.
And then at some point, did the police take you back to the station to show you a photo lineup?
Yes.
A 6-pack photo array?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Sir, I'm showing you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 13. Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 13?
Yes.
And is that the photo array that the police showed you on December 9th of 2016?
Yes.
Does it have your signature, the date, and the time that the police provided you the photo lineup?
Yes.
And does it fairly and accurately look like the lineup that you were asked to do with the police?
Yes, it is.
Judge, at this time I move State's Exhibit number 13 into evidence.
And no objection.
All right, state exhibit number 13, be introduced for the
Did the police read to you a list of like ground rules for the lineup procedure?
Yes, he did.
And did you understand all of the rules that they provided to you?
Yes.
Who were you being asked to identify?
Delinord.
Did the police ask you to identify Delinord, or did the police ask you to identify the person that shot James?
The person that shot James.
Okay. So when they show you the 6 photographs, who are you trying to circle?
Delinord.
Because that's the person that you saw shoot James?
Yes.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Publishing State's Exhibit number 13. Were you able to make an identification in this case?
Yes.
And which individual did you circle?
Number 3.
And is that your initials on the top in the blue pen?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions.
Questions, cross-examination?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. McCray.
How you doing?
Good. So I want to first ask you about observing Delinord Dumercy initially that night. Do you remember seeing Dumercy on a bike?
Well, not at first.
When, if not at first, when did you see Dumercy? After Mr. Peoples pointed him out?
When he shot James, that's when I recognized who it really was.
Did you see the person that shot James on a bike?
Can you repeat the question?
did you see the person that shot James on a bicycle?
We seen a bike. I didn't know that first.
Well, I mean, clearly you knew people. Mr. Peoples saw Dumercy pull up on a bike next to the vehicle you were in. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And he knew it was Dumercy. Obviously, you're not denying that, right?
Yes, he knew. James knew.
I mean, James specifically told your sister, the driver of that vehicle, to stop the car and let him out. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the intent of him leaving the car was he wanted to talk to Dumercy. Isn't that true?
Objection, speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
Well, he told you wanted to talk to Dumercy. Isn't that correct?
Objection,
He didn't say
hearsay.
that.
I'm going to sustain the objection then as well. That is hearsay.
Yeah, well, he told your sister to stop this vehicle and exit it. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then he literally walks towards where Dumercy was driving his bike. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you guys do?
What did we? Me and my sister?
Yeah.
We circled back around to get James.
And once you picked up, first of all, you made an initial stop where Mr. Peoples exits your vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, he then walks towards Dumercy. That's true. Is that correct?
No.
Well, you just said you got out of the car and walked towards where Dumercy was riding his bike. You just testified that.
He wasn't in the exact same spot when he got out of the car.
Well, he was
James.
walking towards the gas station. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then you made another stop. Your sister made, I guess, a partial U-turn.
Yes.
And picks him back up. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then people says, well, go back into the gas station. I want to get out again. Something to that effect. Is that true?
Not really. We just turned in Chevron for some reason. I really don't know why.
Well, for some reason. Is
Yeah.
it true that Mr. Peoples told you to let him out of the car again at the gas station?
No.
He got out of the vehicle.
He just got out.
And he walked towards the entrance of the gas station. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you knew Dumercy was in there. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, and when he got out of your vehicle, he was mad. Is that correct?
No.
He was furious. Is that correct?
No.
Do you remember giving a sworn statement to the police detective in this case?
Yes.
And do you remember being asked this question and giving this answer? What did James say when he got out of the car? Did he say anything? He said no. And then the detective asked, was he mad? Your answer was yes, he was mad, he was upset. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And then the detective asked you how he was upset. Your answer, no, he was furious. Detective, okay, he was upset. Do you remember telling the detective he was mad and furious when he got out of the vehicle?
Yes, I remember.
Okay, now, if I heard you correctly, you are testifying that you didn't call 911 because your cell phone wasn't working. Is that correct?
Yes.
And, do you remember giving a sworn deposition in this case on give me 1 second. This was July 18th, 2019. A deposition is where there was a court reporter and you were placed under oath and asked questions. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And at that deposition, you were asked, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Is that correct?
Yes.
And you said yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you remember being asked at that deposition?
Page one.
This is page 20, line 20. And also, if you'd like, I have your whole deposition. You're free to read this yourself. You can read the whole depo or just this portion. Before I ask you questions, would you like to do that? Or?
I would like you to show the witness the deposition before you do that.
No, approach the witness, Your
Yes, you
Honor.
may.
So I'm referencing page 20, line 20, but again, you can read the whole thing or any portion you'd like. Let me know when you're done.
Page 20.
Yes.
There's no page 20.
Let me give you my copy. Let me know when you're done.
I'm finished. Wait. I'm ready.
First I asked you, did you call the police? And you said no, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I asked you, follow up, did your sister call the police? You said no, is that correct?
Yes.
And then I asked you, you guys had cell phones, right? And your answer was, I didn't have a cell phone. Do you remember telling me that under oath?
Yes.
Did you provide your cell phone to law enforcement?
No.
Well, you're saying you had a cell phone with you, right?
Yes.
And so did you provide your cell phone to law enforcement so they could look through your phone?
No.
Did your sister have a cell phone with her?
I'm not sure.
And do you know whether or not, in your presence, your sister provided a cell phone to law enforcement that night?
I'm not sure.
And what about Mr. Peoples? Did he leave a cell phone in the vehicle?
I'm not sure.
Did he have a cell phone on him that night?
James?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he did or didn't.
Let's get up one moment.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. McCray, how old were you when this shooting took place?
16 or 17?
Okay. And did the police ever ask you for your phone?
No.
Mr. Fleischman asked you about the statement that you made during your deposition, that you said that you didn't have a phone in the deposition.
Yes.
So were you lying to Mr. Fleischman then?
Judge, I'm going to object. Can we approach?
Yeah.
Mr. McCray, why did you tell Mr. Fleischman that you didn't have a cell phone during your deposition?
I don't recall me saying that, but not sure.
Did you have a phone that could make phone calls during this incident?
Objection, ask and answer.
Oral.
Did you have a phone that could make phone calls during this incident?
No.
And then Mr. Fleischman asked you if you saw the defendant on a bicycle, and I wasn't sure what your testimony was. Did you see the defendant riding a bicycle?
Not at first.
Did you ever see the defendant on a bicycle?
We seen a bike, but I didn't see him at first until I seen the bike at the gas station.
So is what you're trying, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Any other question?
Okay.
Are you saying that you saw a bicycle?
Objection, lead it.
I'm going to sustain your objection.
Did you recognize the defendant as being the individual on the bicycle at the time that you see the bicycle?
Delinord?
Yes.
No.
When is the first time that you recognize the person as being this defendant?
When he comes out with the gun, then that's when I know who it was.
Mr. Fleischman asked you about the statement that you made to law enforcement on the night of the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you tell the police something different than you testified to today about how James was when he got out of the car?
Because when it happened, I didn't know how to react to it. I never seen anything like that before, like happening in front of me. I didn't think it would ever happen in front of me, but it did.
Did Mr. Fleischman ask you if you ever gave the police your phone?
No.
Were you ever asked for your phone?
Objection, ask and answer.
I believe that was not to be said, no.
I have no further questions.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Mr. McCray. You can step down.
Thanks.
Stage one, next witness.
The state at this time called Detective Joe Hart.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Joseph John Hart, H-A-R-T,
And how are you currently employed?
as a detective for the Delray Beach Police Department.
How long have you been a detective with the Delray Beach Police Department?
Detective for about eight and a half years,
How long have you worked in law enforcement?
30 years.
What are your duties and responsibilities as a detective in the Delray Beach Police
I
Department?
investigate crimes against persons, which are rapes, robberies, homicides, juvenile crimes, crimes of that nature.
Were you working as a detective in 2016?
Yes,
And I know you told us that you were a detective for the past 8 years.
yes.
Before being a detective, what other duties and responsibilities have you held with the Delray Beach Police Department?
I've been an officer there since January of 1990. I have been a field training officer for most of my career, where I train younger officers. I have been in our narcotics unit. I've worked at a school that was created through the police department. I've been on and in charge of our underwater search and recovery team.
Can you tell the members of the jury what a detective's role is in an investigation?
When we get called out to a scene, we are to talk to everyone at the scene who was at the scene or has any information about the scene. We are to take all of the evidence and weigh the evidence and determine, did a crime occur?
Don't object. Can we approach?
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate decision as to whether a crime occurred is to be made by the jury. Okay? Go ahead.
As a detective, are there lead detectives and assisting detectives?
Yes,
And in this case, are you the lead detective or an assisting detective?
I was assisting.
Who is the lead detective in this case?
Detective Oscar Leon was the lead detective.
Do you arrive at the scene on the night of December 8th, 2016?
I did.
And is one of the tasks that you are assigned to do interviews of witnesses at a later time?
Yes, it was.
On December 9th of 2016, does the defendant come to the Delray Beach Police Department for the purpose of you interviewing?
Yes, he did.
And can you describe to the members of the jury the interview room where you interview the defendant?
Inside the police department, you walk into the lobby. There's a door to go into the main part of the police department. And inside there are some rooms, approximately 8 by 8, 10 by 10 foot by 10 foot, something like that. A room with a table and a couple of chairs, and a doorway leading into it.
Was your contact with the defendant video and audio recorded?
Yes, it was.
And before speaking to the defendant, do you provide him with his Miranda warnings?
When I bring him into the room, I read him his Miranda warnings.
So before questioning him, do you read him his Miranda warnings?
Yes,
Is that contained on the videotape?
that should be on the audio-video recording.
And did he appear to understand his Miranda warnings before agreeing to speak with you?
Yes, sir.
Does the video and audio tape fairly and accurately depict much of your interactions with the defendant?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Detective Hart, showing you State's Exhibit number 32, you said that the video and audio tape fairly and accurately depicts the majority of your interactions with the defendant?
Yes.
Judge, I'd move State's Exhibit number 32 into evidence.
Judge, I was going to ask where you approach.
Yes.
Also, the evidence card drop.
And Detective Hart, we spoke about State's Exhibit number 32. Does that fairly and accurately depict the portions, the recorded portions of your interview with the defendant?
This is a copy of the tape. It is not my handwriting,
Right.
so if
Let
I see it, yes.
me rephrase my question. Does the video and audio recordings fairly and accurately depict the conversations that you had?
Yes, they would.
I would move State's 32 into evidence. And then showing you what is marked for identification purposes only as State's Exhibit number 33.
Okay.
Was there a transcript prepared of portions of the conversation that you had with the defendant on December 9th of 2016?
Yes.
And does the transcript fairly and accurately transcribe some of the interactions that you had with the defendant on that day?
It does.
Judge, same objections as supposed.
All right. And the court will maintain the same rulings that we made with regard to those objections. So State Exhibit 32 would be admitted with the objection. And was the transcript also being admitted?
I don't
believe it's been
No, I don't. No, sir. So, Detective Hart, the conversation that you have with the defendant being memorialized on the tape, I'm not going to ask you specific questions about the conversations that you had.
Okay.
At some point, does the defendant provide you a location of where a firearm can be located?
Yes, he did.
And do you turn that information over to other members of law enforcement?
We did.
Did you also turn over the information that the defendant provided to you to Detective Leon to assist with his investigation?
I did.
Make one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Fleischman, please examine.
There's no further questions. I got to approach. Just one.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little bit of an early recess for about 20 minutes, and we'll start back up with testimony as soon as we come back. So while you're on the recess, please don't discuss this case, anything about it whatsoever with any of the other jurors or any family members or friends or coworkers. Don't call anybody about the case. Don't use your cell phones to look up anything about the case or any electronic devices. And with that being said, I'll see you back in about 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
I am not available tomorrow morning.
Okay. When are you available?
I'm available the rest of the day.
What's the morning end? What time is the morning end?
I would probably be available after 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
Is that okay?
It's fine. It's unlikely we would call you, but
I understand that. I have something going on at 9 o'clock that will take about
of course, we would
12.
definitely work around your schedule.
Yes, I should be available after 1. The state, I think you even have my cell phone number.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my personal cell number, so I would be available.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anything else before we take recess?
Yeah, we'll watch the tape together.
I did also just listen to it, and everything that Mr. Carnfield marked off as Your Honor's orders was off of the audio that I listened to. So I listened to each thing. But Mr. Fleischman should listen with his own ears.
Sure. Okay, very good. We'll be in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And just for the record, I'll be reading these 2 instructions you gave me before. Are you going to be introducing the video right?
Yes,
The
the-
recording when we come back?
Yeah, the plan is to publish that portion of the video and then finish with Detective Leon.
Okay, so then I will read these 2 instructions right before we begin. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.